Hello guys, Essex Hydra here, and in today's video we're going to be running through the current melee animations within the game, because the time I did the previous video on what's wrong with melee, quite a lot has changed, and what we're going to do in this video is run through the new and updated melee animations for some of the weapons, talking through the differences, the things that have been changed, what looks better, and what I believe still doesn't quite look up to scratch or industry standard. So if we bring up a little bit of old footage, just to give you a little bit of a reminder as to how sort of flat things were feeling before. You remember the Eviscerator itself just looked like you were waving a stick around, really. It wasn't particularly exciting or didn't give you a lot of feedback when you were using it. Power Sword as well was really, again, just waving a baton around. It was very hard to see what you were doing with the weapon while in combat, and you didn't get a lot of feedback from the weapon or from the animations as to what actual ability you've just done and what the abilities are doing. Sound effect wise as well, things were a little bit empty with some very sort of high pitch, again like you're waving a stick around, nothing that really sounded as meaty as some of the Path of Exile comparisons. So if I bring up a little bit of footage now of Path of Exile just to remind you as to what I was comparing this to in the past, here's a small clip just to demonstrating a few of these abilities.
Sort of shockwaves coming out from the AoE whirlwinds. There's additional effects in addition to...
Okay, so as you can see, the sound is very clear, the animations are very individual. You can tell exactly what you've done just from the animation. So what we'll do now is we'll load up Inquisitor, and here we are with a character I made earlier. This guy's rocking an Eviscerator, which is the two-handed chainsword. I really like the weapon. I have to say the skin for this looks amazing. So let's see what's different. We'll start off with the left click. So obviously there are some slightly different animations, but you'll notice there is a slight swiping animation added, as well as obviously the revving of the chainsaw that was there previously. We compare that with the right click, and there we go. We now can have a little bit of a visual aid as to what we're doing. And as well as that, we get a nice little rev of the chainsaw as we go. Looks pretty nice. One more time. I have to say the red looks a little bit blotchy. It does look, dare I say, a little bit cheap, but it looks miles better. Let's move on to the next ability. Triple swipe. Now I held shift there so I wasn't walking along. That's why it looked like I was sort of moonwalking while doing that. I like it. It definitely looks better if we do that one more time. And we'll do that once to the side in a moment. I do get the impression though that the actual animation or swipe is very much in the sort of the mid-blade portion, which I think what you'll notice there if I do that one more time, and I am being very picky here, but this is only with the very best interests of Neocore at heart. If we do this one more time, it does look like the last third of the shaft, not of the shaft, sorry, of the actual blade, doesn't really produce any animation, and I quite like the animation to sync up with the entire blade, because basically the animation looks shorter than what you're actually doing, and in my mind an animation should always represent what you're doing in terms of the actual area around the character. Let's take this next one for example. I think this highlights it beautifully. So that animation there for the spin, it's a lot better than what used to be there, which was nothing. Well, I say that. Actually, I'm not a fan of this one. Reason being is I'll keep doing it. The reason being is that the actual spin seems to really sort of emanate from your character. It looks like you're twirling in a circle and that the damage is somehow coming from your body. Whereas, what I think would be perhaps a much more harder to implement, time-consuming, but would look a lot better, is if that spiral emanated from your weapon instead. Even if it was just one consecutive swipe in a circle, if we compare that with the the Path of Exile equivalent, I think it's safe to say that the Path of Exile equivalent looks better. Although obviously we have a chainsword which sounds much cooler. What we'll do is we'll just run off and find some enemies, and then we'll compare the next weapon. I just want to show you this melee weapon in action because it does actually give you some nice feedback now. We've got some enemies over here that we can crush. So we'll just cut the first one up with a standard swipe. There we go. Another swipe, and now we'll walk and slice them open. You see a head fall off. Lovely jubbly. Now, while we're here, we'll jump up in the air and spin in a circle with our 2 ability. Obviously, I'm covered in flame, making things a little bit hard to see at the moment. Right, let's try spinning in the circle again. There we go. Not too bad, not too bad. I think the animation's actually lost when you're around that many enemies, but it's not too bad. In terms of enemy animations, obviously when you're cutting someone in half, there's still really no animation that they're being cut in half, so they just stand still. That does look a little bit clunky, but hey-ho. Let's pull out another weapon here, the power sword. So if we bring up a little bit of previous footage as to what was going on with the power sword, you'll notice that really we're just swinging it around, doing a little bit of a dance on the spot. It looked... The pirouettes, it looks quite nice, but again, it's really hard to actually know what you're doing, what ability you've just used, and it doesn't really feel like a power sword either. I will talk about glows another time, but power weapons glowing, for me anyway, is part of a power weapon. It was when I collected the miniatures anyway. It is within the lore as well, that they emanate a glow because they use warp energy, etc, etc, but there you go. So let's start swinging. So swing away, swing away, swing away. You'll see that we have, now a little bit similar to the Eviscerator, the actual swipe itself for, I think, 2 out of 3 of the animations is sort of 2/3 of the way down the weapon, which is fine. It does have the effect, though, of not actually being very far from your character, but that's fine. I guess you have fairly short arms, or rather you've got a massive body which makes, or a massive tank of armour strapped to you, so it does make your arms look a little bit shorter. It looks fairly well proportionate. There is one of them that I'm not such a fan of, and that's where you swipe from your sword to your... No, from your shield arm to your sword arm, when you swipe in that direction. The actual animation for me, and again we're being picky, or rather I'm being particularly anal in this video, but it feels like it's about 0.1, maybe 0.05 of a second too slow. Again, if you've been watching them so far and paying that much attention, let's have a little focus for a second. And when I do, yep, there we go. That's just me being particularly picky, but there you go, that's the first ability here. Second one, just general swipe, much, much better. It doesn't look particularly impressive, and again, I think this is not entirely timed properly with the ability. You can see you swing the sword and then the swipe comes out. I would probably say it's probably 0.1 of a second later, but the animation really should be the extension of the weapon. This is a really minor thing. That one there looked absolutely fine. The crossbody swing, no problem at all. Again, absolutely fine. Let's see if we do the other swing one more time. There you go. For me, that just doesn't quite sync up properly. Looks a little bit clunky. For most people, this won't be an issue. But if you want a game to look polished, all of those little things have to be perfect. Because while you might not notice them sometimes, people just tend to give the feedback of animations looked bad. Right, what we'll do now is we'll quit this character, we'll load up the assassin and have a look at some of the other weapons. Hello guys, so here we are with the assassin. I've brought with me 2 of the new 2-handed weapons, one being the power sword and the other being the 2-handed sort of death cult blade. What we'll do is we'll run through these 2 items, but just before I do, I'll say that I do feel that the assassin has had a lot of TLC when it comes to her melee animations. What we'll do is we'll get cracking, we'll see how they look. Now we can see a fairly clear swipe animation, looks to be nicely synced with the sword, looks pretty neat, gets a little bit quicker the longer you do it, and there you go, not much else to say there. She swings that 2-handed sword around like it's a feather. Now, here's where things start, I feel, to really come apart from the Crusader. If you look at the distance from the character of this attack compared to the one-handed attack of the power sword swing of the Crusader, there is a massive, massive difference in terms of length. Now, obviously, this sword is probably about 1/3 longer than the Crusader's. However, the animation is about 6 times the distance, and this is where I feel the Crusader's animation is a little bit underwhelming, or maybe the Assassin's is overpowering. However, I think the animation for this looks pretty darn good. Now, next couple of abilities for this weapon, we have what is, well, really a dash of sorts, with a nice little purple trail behind us, a little fart cloud. That's nice, nothing wrong there. And on to the fourth one. There we go. Now, for this one, if you could humour me for a second and just close your eyes, make sure you're paying attention and tell me what this sounds like. In your head, obviously. Okay, one more time just in case you missed it. Okay, so for me, that sounded like an EMP. Okay, an electromagnetic pulse, and it sounded very electric and energetic, and unfortunately that's for a Serpent Strike, which is a jump on people and apply poisons. They've got the green. Symbolic for poison, looks pretty good. Looks very World of Warcrafty, that sort of shade of green. I like it, however I feel the sound effect is very misplaced for it. But that is just a personal opinion, you may disagree. But I do feel sound effects should also represent what's actually happening. It doesn't sound like you're applying poison to everyone, it sounds more like you're doing, as I say, some form of EMP, something electric or energetic. On to the next weapon now, the Cathian Sword. So here we go with some swipes. We'll hold the shift key down, see how they look. Got a nice green hint indicating the weapon's probably poisoned. I think for the most part they are fairly well timed, except again for the crossbody swing, which is again slightly delayed. This may actually be down to the, I don't know, perhaps some of the core mechanics of the game. Perhaps the developer can humour me. I'm always curious about how things like this work, but all of the right to left from the character's perspective syncs up nicely. All of the left to right from the character's perspective, again, there seems to be a little bit of a delay. Might just be my imagination though, maybe I'm just a bit weird. Now, I won't hold the shift key because that breaks that button. We'll try that one more time. The next attack I think is very, very impressive. Right, so we can move along while doing this. And if you look at the red here, this looks so much better than the Crusader's equivalent on the Eviscerator. It looks like a lot more time and energy and effects have gone into this. It looks really nice. The little cloud effects in particular really, really look good. So I have to say, whoever is doing the animations, I suspect that they are an assassin player, because they've certainly done a good job in making them look great, but I do feel things are a little bit disproportionate. Next move. Firing a man at someone. We'll have to find a man to throw our man at. When you hit them with your man that you throw, and you hit the other man you're throwing your man at, it summons more men, and these men then attack that man. So we'll have to wait for that one, but last one before we go is throwing another man, a running man this time. Let's find out what exactly we've got round the corner and see what we can do. Let's throw a man, there you go, and you see the other men come to join in. It's a nice looking attack, and I have to say far more complex than anything they've come up with thus far for the Crusader. So lovely, look at that, sounds beautiful as well, looks nice, sound effects are good as well. And off we go. Things, I have to say, for the melee assassin certainly look and feel heaps better. Guys, hopefully you found that video interesting. Hopefully you have some opinions of your own as to the weapons you use, what you feel looks good, what you feel could be perhaps improved on a little bit. Let me know down below in the comments, or create your own threads within the forums, because guys, unless you tell them that you do not like the look of something, then they will assume that it looks fine. Guys, have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the week.